Hello ladies and gentlemen, Richard the Dick Coughlan 000. This is going to be a new series of videos I'm going to do on this channel, News from the Bigots. I don't know what I'm going to call it yet. Either way, it's just going to be a short video where I talk about several stories from the week that I'd like to share with you regarding bigots and bigoted related activities that are going on about the world. Story number one, this comes from my favourite blonde-haired Dutch Islamophobe, Geert Wilders, is apparently planning on releasing a book in which is going to be titled Islam is Ideology. This is, of course, comes from his favourite little dogmatic tenet that Islam is an ideology, not a religion, which is unfortunately something that can be debunked by anyone who's got a dictionary and 2 minutes. I'll give you a tip, Gert, here. Save yourself some time, buy a copy of Mein Kampf, cross the word Jew out and put Muslim. He is also apparently planning on working on and releasing a sequel to Fitna. God knows what that'll be about. Second story, and this is going to be a shocker for you, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to give credit to the EDL. Yes, this week the EDL have severed ties with their Jewish division. Their Jewish division, which is headed by Roberta Moore, has recently, as I have reported, been linked with a group called the Jewish Task Force, who are known terrorist organisation. And the EDL, who are uncomfortable with this, made a statement saying they were not connected to them. The Jewish division hit back and said, yes, we bloody well are. EDL said, no, we're fucking well not. Then it's just got to a point now where the EDL have said, well, we don't want anything to do with terrorism or terrorists, so we're probably going to have to sever ties completely with the EDL Jewish division. You know it's getting bad when the Nazis are kicking out the Jews for being too extreme. Over in America, and a lovely little piece of hypocritical anti-immigration bigotry here from a Republican called Brian Fisher, who recently said in an article printed on his website that Native Americans should have taken the example of Pocahontas and assimilated. I kid you not, ladies and gentlemen. It's arresting to think that how different the history of America and American settlement and expansion could have been if the other indigenous people had followed Pocahontas. She not only recognised the superiority of the god whom the colonists worshipped over the gods of the native people, she recognised the superiority, not the perfection, of their culture and adopted its patterns and language as her own. In other words, she both converted and assimilated. Had the other indigenous people followed example, their assimilation into what became America could have been seamless and bloodless. Sadly, it was not to be. I'm not making this up. And finally, a lovely little story here for another one, again from America, involving a Republican called Mike Hogan, who recently, in a speech he gave at a Catholic church, made a joke about bombing an abortion clinic. His exact words were, "Now I don't condone bombing abortion clinics, but it has crossed my mind." This, believe it or not, was greeted by a thunderous laughter and applause. Afterwards, when he was challenged about this, Mike Hogan said, "Well, I've got to measure everything, I say. I mean, I'm not going to be politically correct." Of course not. You're a politician. I wouldn't want you to be correct about anything. That was a joke. This was an audience for this. This is a Catholic church. I guarantee you they are 110% pro-life. And what would Jesus do? He'd joke about bombing an abortion clinic. Terrorism. It's hilarious. That's all from this week's edition of Bigoted Fucktard News. Richard the Dick Coughlan 000. Good night. May God bless. Hi, I'm Richard the Dick Coughlan 000, and it's time for the Dix O'Clock News. I'd normally have an intro here, but I haven't got one. But if someone wants to make me an intro for the Dix O'Clock News, do so. On with the show. Hi, welcome to the Dix O'Clock News. This is where I discuss some of my favourite news stories of the week pertaining to the general issues that I like to talk about on this channel. First one is, Iran says the London Olympic Committee is racist. Yes, Iran, a country led by a man who attends Holocaust denial conventions, is complaining that the already maligned Olympic logo is indeed racist. This is because he claims it spells out the word Zion. They've issued a statement, Iran have issued a statement this week. The use of the word Zion by the designer of the Olympics logo in the emblem of the Olympic Games 2012 is a very revolting act. Some people see Christ in a dog's arse, other people see pro-Israeli propaganda in an Olympic logo. Iran have even issued a statement saying that they may boycott the Olympic Games. This just in, no one gives a shit. Moving on to America, which is possibly the best news story I've heard in my entire life. In Ohio, a group of pro-life nutters trying to pass legislation to get abortion banned after a 6-week period, they have set a precedent by calling upon to testify on their behalf A 9-week-old fetus. A 9-week-old fetus was on the list of people to testify on behalf of this group for the passing of this legislation. I'll even leave a link to a Vimeo video where you can go and see the entire 20-minute testimonial. It's riveting stuff. I only watched it because I wanted to see how on earth they were going to get him to swear on the Bible, but he didn't. How can we trust him? In the UK this week, Daily Star journalist Richard Peppiatt quit the newspaper following claims that he himself and other people at the Daily Star had fabricated news stories about Muslims and also promoted and tried to align itself positively with groups such as the EDL. One of the recent stories that Peppiatt claims that the Daily Star fabricated was that the EDL were planning on running as a political party. This is in fact completely not true. The EDL were not planning on running as a political party at all, and Mr. Peppiatt, in disgust, has left the newspaper. In other news, the EDL are now planning on running as a political party. In an interview, which you can go read down in the link below with The Independent, the EDL leader, Tommy Robinson, has been meeting with posh boys, and those are his words, not mine, and people who know stuff about politics in order to try and legitimately run candidates in elections for the EDL. Does this mean that the Daily Star did not make up the story? No, because Tommy Robinson also admitted that they only got the idea after reading it in the Daily Star. Thanks, Daily Star. Also in news breaking this week, you may remember earlier on this week, I talked about Anjem Choudary going to America where he was going to protest in front of the White House for something. He was on Fox News. He even got pimped out by on Glenn Beck's pseudo news website called The Blaze, where they claimed that the Sharia for America organisation were calling for the Statue of Liberty to have a burqa put on it. However, Anjem Choudary, in a YouTube video on his YouTube channel, yes, Anjem Choudary has a YouTube channel, and for reasons I can't quite fathom, it would appear that he has called off the protest. What did I tell you? Just ignore him. He's a twat. And in final news, this week the BNP leader Nick Griffin went to Wales where he wanted to talk to people about forming some sort of Welsh assembly, and one of the people he met was a guy called Brian Powell. Here's a picture of Nick Griffin with Brian Powell, and here's a picture of Brian Powell relaxing at home. That's it for the Dix O'Clock News. I'm Richard the Dick Coughlan, 000. Good night, and may God be less. Hi there, Richard the Dick Coughlan, 000, and welcome to the Dix O'Clock News. That was an intro made by the lovely user Bionic Dance. I'll leave a link to her channel in the down below bar. Thanks to everyone else who made me an intro. Feel free to do it. I'll use them all at some point, so don't worry. Welcome to this week's episode of Dix O'Clock News, a show where I go through some of my favourite news stories of the wacky and wonderful world of retarded mental bigots. In counter-stealth jihad news, it turns out that Coca-Cola are being sued by Muslims. In an expose by Al Jazeera TV, they found out that the ingredients of Coca-Cola actually produce alcohol, and they are now shitting themselves because they've been selling it in Muslim countries and Muslims have been drinking it, and now they're a little bit traumatised. Several Muslims have protested and said they're going to sue Coca-Cola for what they call mental anguish and trauma. It's called a hangover, mate. However, there is some scepticism as to whether the combination of the ingredients in Coca-Cola do produce alcohol, but it would be fucking funny, wouldn't it? Ironic moment of the week comes from America, where Sarah Palin criticised the state senators of Wisconsin for stepping down early before they'd finished their job. Moving on, back to the UK, and in Lincolnshire this week, something remarkable happened, something that I think actually deserves this man to be knighted. A former member of the EDL has actually been banned from the EDL, get this, for being too racist. The Lincolnshire man, Richard Crasbo, was charged with racial and aggravated abuse of an Asian family, and he was issued with an anti-social behaviour order, also known in this country as an ASBO. Richard Crasbo was given an ASBO. He should be grateful his name isn't cranial rape, really. Sticking in the UK, this week, BNP leader Nick Griffin got himself into a world of trouble that led to a huge backlash on his Facebook page. Yes, Nick Griffin has a Facebook page. What did he do? Did he rape a grandmother? Did he jump on a baby's head? Did he join the Nation of Islam? No. Nick Griffin tweeted that he bought a kebab. And if you don't believe me, I've left a link down there in the down below bar which shows a screenshot of all of the people and the comments that he received. Things like, what? A kebab shop that sells halal meat? Not a kebab, surely. Tut tut, Nick. Shame on you and your belly. Should have gone to the chippy and bought fish and chips. Not halal. Halal's a no-no for me. I'm surprised at you, Nick. Nick, your standards are slipping. Yes, your standards are slipping, yeah. Right, this has to be a joke. It surely is a joke. A kebab? Have you been raped or what? Or are you just proving a point that you're not racist, Nick? You're a ball bag if you go to a kebab shop. Why don't you quit right now, you twat? You're obviously a troll, Nick. No nationalist would buy a kebab. Nice to see they're dealing with it in a calm, reasoned way. They're not racist, though. Kebab is a food, not a race. News coming out from Germany, and it's about Nazis, I'm afraid. Former German Nationalist Party member Monica Scrub has recently left the organisation and become a socialist. Why was this? Was it because of a change of values? Was it due to a life-changing incident in her own experience? No, what happened? Monica Scrub used to be a man, and then she wasn't. And now she's joined the Socialist Party and is running for office. If you're a Nazi and you want to be a socialist, chop your balls off. As if we didn't have enough fucking problems like that. And finally, news from the UK. A man was arrested this week after he was found out he was selling a terrorist handbook online and making money for it. I went and bought a copy of this terrorist handbook and I'm reading it as we speak. I'll let you know how it turns out. That's all for the Dix O'Clock News this week. It's been a pleasure talking to you. I'm Richard the Dick Coughlan, 000. Fuck off. Welcome to the Dix O'Clock News. Yes, it's time for the Dix O'Clock News. This is kind of like a cross between Sexy Phil and a comedic news show. Let's get on, shall we? In news from America, David Duke has recently won a copyright claim that was filed against him by a company called Right Haven. It's ironic, really, because Right Haven sounds like the sort of place David Duke would want to live. David Duke, for those of you who are not aware, is the leader of the Ku Klux Klan. He's one of the few people who I actually have a lot of respect for in this particular political area, mainly because of this. I mean, look at the guy. When you're so dedicated to the act of racial segregation that you're going to separate your brown hairs from your white hairs on your head, you've got to respect that, really. The company Right Haven are a copyright lawsuit company who have a habit of being extremely unnecessarily litigious. They have even been referred to in some cases as copyright trolls. I spoke to a representative from Right Haven and they had this to say. I'm not a troll! Thank you very much. And in news that proves finally that the Tea Party is definitely not racist, an email was sent out from the Tea Party this week called Destroy the Family, Destroy Your Country, in which he talks about a white genocide. We would have spoken to someone from the Tea Party, but I already know what the fuck they would have said about it. Anti-racist is code word for anti-white. Anti-racist is code word for anti-white. You just think I'm a nasty one to kill this many Jude. Oh my god, I'm a nasty one. Anti-racist is code word for anti-white. Anti-racist is code word for anti-white. Anti-racist is code word for anti-white. You think I'm a nasty one to kill this many Jude. Oh my god, I'm a nasty one. Anti-racist is code word for anti-white. Speaking of white supremacist dickheads, let's come over to this country and talk about the BNP. The BNP was recently in the news when a member of the BNP recently defected to the English Democrats Party after comparing Nick Griffin to Robert Mugabe. With this apparently upset Nick Griffin, although I'm not sure whether it upset him because he was being compared to a mass murderous dictator or a black man. Either way, I spoke to Nick Griffin and he had this to say. Fuck you, asshole. Interestingly as well, Nick Griffin has found himself this week at the forefront of a very, very interesting advert campaign in order to promote the idea of alternative voting. Why has he been put at the forefront of it? It turns out that alternative voting will not actually favour the BNP, and they might go from having no seats to having even less seats. So Nick Griffin is adamantly opposed to this, and research recently showed that 8 out of 10 people, when questioned about this, when informed that Nick Griffin will be voting no against alternative voting, they will immediately vote yes. Go figure. Rush Limbaugh was back to his old ways in America when he stated this week that birth control is only for sluts. What he actually said was, why are we supposed to pay if a woman didn't keep her legs closed? Rush, I'm not joking, mate. You look like this. And your wife looks like this. If it wasn't for the money you had and you were paying her, she wouldn't even open her fucking legs in the first place. You should be grateful for sluts, mate. I spoke to Rush Limbaugh about this and he had this to say. The company Transocean has recently got in a bit of trouble for insensitive remarks that it made regarding the fact that in 2010 it was the best year for safety in the company, despite the blowout that sank one of its rigs and killed 11 workers and caused a huge oil spill. Yeah, slightly insensitive and slightly stupid. That would be kind of like an organisation that was trying to prevent teen pregnancy giving Bristol Palin a load of money. What's it? Oh. A Apparently, in recent news that's just developed, Bristol Palin has just been paid $262,000 by an American company called teenpregnancyprevention.org. Some of these jokes write themselves, don't they? Also in America, one of the many religious right hate groups is outraged at this advert by Calvin Klein. The billboard, they claim, spells out the word fuck. What they're saying is the hands, if you look at them, the hands make the word F. There's the CK on the end, and then you've got the shape of the bikini or the bra the woman's wearing that makes the U. Does this just sound like a really sort of excuse, like a really sort of convoluted and tenuous excuse for perverts who were caught there? Some pervy old right-wing Christian was caught by his wife. What are you doing? I'm just looking for the word fuck. I know how he feels though, because this week there was a load of outrage about this t-shirt that I released. All that t-shirt is, I'm looking for rapeseed to try and make rapeseed oil so I can create more sort of economical and environmentally friendly fuel. I don't know why people are getting so upset about it. People see what they want to see. And in the stereotypes about Americans are sometimes completely true, it has now been determined that in America passenger boats have now got to lower the limits of passengers they can have because Americans are too fat. Yes, 2 years ago this was what it was like to get your bitches on the boat, and this year this is what it's like. But it doesn't go for passengers, it also goes for one-man ships as well. I'd like to thank Diana Boston for posing for this picture. And in final news, a Muslim organisation in London has decided to try and combat the idea of stigmatising Muslims as all terrorists with a bus advertisement campaign. This is the advert they're going for. Not too bad, I suppose. However, I think they should go for something a bit more light-hearted, maybe a bit more of a sense of humour, and also trying to show that Islam is not bad when compared to other things. This is one of the ones I would have gone for. Works already, don't you think? Or maybe even something like this. Oh, go back to that picture. That guy looks really familiar. That's it for the Dix O'Clock News. Until next time, good night, and go fuck yourself. Hi there, it's that time of week. It's time for... Thank you to the user Cyborg Atheist for making me that intro. I'll leave a link to his channel in the below bar along with all the information regarding this week's stories. Let's crack on, shall we? News coming out from Canada, and there was unrest earlier this week when it was announced there was going to be loads of rallies involving various Nazi and white supremacist groups. The police were very concerned and put out several warnings to locals, and this is the turnout that they had to deal with. Oh, but wait, there was more. If you're wondering why the people are circled, those were the actual guys that turned up. The others were just guys who happened to be there who joined in afterwards. That's 4 people in total. News from America, and it appears that Donald Trump, a potential Republican candidate for president, has come out as a bit of a birther. He is in fact questioning the authenticity of Barack Obama's birth certificate. And let's face it, when you look at this man, you know he is a guy who you can trust when it comes to judging the authenticity of fucking anything. Mike Voritz would laugh at your hair, Donald. News coming out from the Middle East, and with the recent uprisings in various countries, news came out from Egypt that there was actually a struggle that you won't hear about. Yes, whilst all the good stories about revolutions are coming out, 2 men were arrested and charged this week in Cairo for assaulting a camel. They were charged, they actually had the gall to assault a camel. I don't know what exactly wound them up, but I can imagine it went something like this. What the fucking are you looking at, you fucking... Oi, I fuck your sister, cat. I can only imagine. In redundant story of the week, but done just for the lulz, Nick Griffin is apparently a lying bastard. Yes, on his Facebook group this week, Nick Griffin actually tweeted about a story coming out of Liverpool. Shocking news from the streets of Liverpool. A Hoyton senior school, now Hoyton is not actually in Liverpool, but we'll move on from there, went to Oldham yesterday for a footy match and won 5-3. At the end, even though this was in Oldham, so it's from the streets of Liverpool, right? At the end, 70 Muslims were waiting for them, waiting without a G, waiting for them, and battered the lads. One was attacked by 15 and is in a bad way. The Muslims were all in their 20s and the Hoyton lads were all 13 to 15. Now, several people were obviously outraged at that. It's disgusting, send them back, fucking coming over here and kicking the shit out of our kids. We're supposed to fucking do that. Here's the interesting bit. A few people did actually ask Nick to provide a link to the story. Because you think, 70 people kicking the living shit out of this would be an excuse for the Daily Star not to make up stories about Muslim-only toilets. But guess what? He didn't provide a link. Do you know why? Because it didn't happen. Nick Griffin has yet to comment on this. Some people are saying, well, maybe he was just confused. What, he imagined there were 70 Muslims beating up a load of teenage kids? I'm going to stay in Britain for the last story this week, following the news that the Jewish division of the EDL has been disbanded after being linked with terrorist organisation the Jewish Task Force, and the gay division has been somewhat divided. EDL have announced this week on a YouTube video that they are opening a new division. It's called the DDL, and the DDL stands for the Dog Defence League. I'm not going to. There was actually a YouTube video posted. This is what the description said. It says the Dog Defence League. Ooh, tickle me now. It says the Dog Defence League, but the video shows a Rottweiler by the name of Tyson, who apparently attacks Muslim cab drivers who won't let in guide dogs. The only good thing that can come out of this for the EDL is from now on, I guess it is kind of unfair for me to accuse them of having no black members. As ludicrous as it sounds that the EDU are now having a dog division, I still think that Tyson the Rottweiler is more coherent, understandable and intelligent than this guy.
Hello sir, and why are you here today?
I'm here to protest, right, because I'm going on a march because I want Britain to be back British. I want Britain to be back British. We've got interracial law and the Muslimic infidel. They're trying to get their law over our country, and it is happening. It's happening in other countries. Everything, it's happening in every country. It's like you've got the Iraqi law that they put down in London. Like we're more or less near London today, but they're trying to put the Iraqi law down on London. They're just trying to put their law down on us, and we can't stand for that.
Which Iraqi law is this?
It's the Muslimic law. They've got their law. Obviously, it's their law, isn't it? Like we can't do anything about that, but we're just trying to stop Muslimic. You've got Muslimic rape gangs nowadays. There's 15-year-olds getting raped and everything. It just can't happen. That's why all these people are here. All these people around us, that's why they're there.
Thank you very much.
That's it for all this week on the Dix O'Clock News. I will see you next week. I'm Richard the Dick Coughlan, 000. Go fuck yourself. Hi there, Richard the Dick Coughlan, 000, and it's time for... Yes, it's the Dix O'Clock News, the only news show that brings you all the stories nobody gives a shit about. This week's episode is sponsored by Muslimic ray guns. Shit just got real. Let's kick off this week's episode with my favourite group of whipping boy fucktards, the EDL. Yes, for the last 28 days, ladies and gentlemen, you might not realise this, but the EDL has been staging an epic protest outside Kentucky Fried Chicken in Blackburn. It's 28 days they have been protesting Kentucky Fried Chicken. Here is a picture on day 28. Let's go there now, live. I'm not making it up, that is the turnout for the protest. Now, the 28-day protest they're having there is because they've just found out that KFC has been serving halal chicken, something they've actually been doing for the last 10 years. And they've been protesting this because this is a sign, obviously, of Islamification. Absolutely no complaint has been made about the fact that also they serve kosher food as well. And they also seem to have not taken into account the fact that all meat in this country, whether it's halal, kosher, or just plain ordinary, has to be fucking stunned before it's killed, because it's got to meet Western standard fucking practices in slaughtering. Even on their Facebook page commented that this is a fucking disgrace, only 6 people turned up. we look like a right bunch of cunts. It's ironic considering that it was only a few years ago that KFC were actually being sued by Muslims and Jews in areas in this country after it was revealed that they were using pork juice to actually inflate the size of their chicken. You can't please everyone, can you? And plus, considering that almost every single fast food joint and supermarket in this country sells halal, the BNP will have to boycott all them, which means if they actually do that, they could starve to death within a few weeks. I'm all for it. Moving on, as we approach the most epic contest of the year, ladies and gentlemen, of course I'm talking about Miss Universe. And rather than enter the usual indigenous sort of lady that we have, the usual bunch of wonky-tooth fucking rippers that we might normally go in there, we've got this lady who's trying to get in there. Her name is Shana Bakari, and she wants to be the first Muslim woman to ever represent Great Britain in Miss Universe. Unfortunately, this has caused her a bit of a problem. Yes, you might have guessed it, she's been receiving death threats. Who from? Well, from radical Muslims. Oh, and white skinhead nationalists. Oh, and radical feminists as well. Now, can I ask all of you, calm the fuck down. How do you expect us to be able to get Islam into the 21st century and allow them to reject this idea of oppressing women unless we allow one Muslim woman to take part in one of the usual patronising beauty pageants where she will be fucking treated like a piece of meat and put on parade for the sight of gawping men who are sitting there wanking? It's only fair. News from America, and this man, Drew Cole, who's a 32-year-old homosexual Mormon. Yes, I said it right. Homosexual can join the Mormon church, but as long as they take a vow of celibacy and don't actually engage in any sexual activity. We wouldn't want that. They don't have magic underpants, they're cast iron fucking chastity belts. He has recently been rejected and kicked out of the Mormon church because he refused to let go and denounce all of his gay friends. I believe when he was asked this, his exact words were, "I wish I knew how to quit you." Seeing as this is their policy, maybe they should change their name from the Mormon Church to the Less Men Church. Because he's queer. Anyway, in this week's Christians Can Get Away With Anything When Everyone's Shit Scared of Muslims story, this is a picture of Lucy Adenji. She is a church pastor in Barking in East London. She's 21 years old and she's just recently been charged by bringing in 2 children to work as servants from Africa. I wouldn't mind, this bitch has got 5 children. Can't she fucking have a couple more? In Coughlan Told You So, story of the fucking week, remember Pastor Terry Jones, the guy who last year threatened to burn a Quran on September the 11th and everyone went fucking mental? The guy who bottled it at the end, why? Because he was given a car by Toyota if he promised not to fucking burn a Quran? Well, guess what he did recently? Yes, he burnt a Quran. Not only did he burn a Quran, but he actually had a fucking fake kangaroo court, and they actually sentenced the Quran for crimes against humanity and then burnt it in an execution. And in the final story this week, it turns out that apparently sex can kill you if you don't exercise. A recent study was performed by a woman called Dr. Isa Debara, and it appears that in March 23rd, the issue journal of the American Medical Association explained that people are 3.5 times more likely to have a heart attack when exercising compared to when they are at rest. Likewise, people are 2.7 times more likely to have a heart attack when they're having sex if they don't exercise. Yeah, so it's either exercise and live longer, or I can die young, eating what I want, smoking, drinking, and I can die fucking. That's going to motivate lots of people to get off their arse, isn't it? That's it for this week's Dicks O'Clock News. I'm Richard the Dick Coughlan. Fuck off. Hi there, Richard the Coughlan 000, and you know what time it is? Yes, it's the greatest news show on the planet right now, where I, Richard Coughlan, take the funny news stories from the week and make them funny. Yeah, there's a gap in the market, nobody's doing that, are they? Let's start in America, where Republicans Alaska Governor Sean Parnell's nominee for the Alaska Judiciary Council would apparently like to see Alaska bring in a law that would prosecute people for having sex outside of wedlock and committing adultery. In a telephone testimony, Don Hayes of Valdez told the state Senate Judiciary Committee that premarital sex should be outlawed because it could cause violence and spread disease. Do you know what else causes violence and spreading disease? Being alive! Let's outlaw that, shall we? He was then asked to clarify, so you think it should be a crime? He said, well, I'll let the voters decide, which is political slang for Yes. However, I don't think this legislation is going to be too popular amongst the politicians in general, particularly the Republicans, because if this legislation comes in and it's enacted retrospectively, it could be a big problem for politicians like Edison Meisler Alejandro, or Merrill Robert Barter, or Elliot Spitzer, Bill Clinton, Newt Gingrich, Bill O'Reilly, Mark Foley, not the wrestler, Rudolph Giuliani, Randy Hopper. George Reekers, Neil Bush, David Swartz, Don Sherwood, Dennis Isle Rader, Randall Cassidy, Louis Bears, and of course the entire NRCC, who in 2010 used a strip club named Forte Deuce to have their fucking fundraiser gatherings. They said there was no nudity involved, but it was interesting that in 2009 they picked another fucking strip club to do the same thing. Basically all of them will be locked up. I'm all for this law, quite frankly. Back to the UK, and let's go up to good old Scotland, where apparently, good news for the Scots, in 2010, incidents involving racial motivation dropped by 4% from 2009. Isn't that good? This, of course, begs the question. There are black people in Scotland? In Obvious Joke is Obvious Story of the Week, and we're going to see what the obvious joke is here. The Vatican has warned that the internet is a danger to children. Let's see how many paedophile double entendres I can fit in to this statement released by Carlo Clamatti, who's a member of the university who specialises in the dangers posed to young people by Satanism. He said that the internet makes it much easier than it did in the past to find information about Satanism. You know what else the internet makes it easier to find? In just a few minutes you can contact Satanist groups and research occultism. Do you know what else you can contact in just a few minutes? The conference is not about how to become an exorcist. Become a what? It's to share information about exorcism, Satanism, and sex. He said sects, not sex. But you know they did mean it's sex. It's to give help to families and priests. There's a particular risk for young people who are in difficulties and who are emotionally fragile. Do you know what else is fragile in a young person? We did it! Oh, and in Shocking Story of the Week, just to follow on from that one, a Catholic pastor in America, in Wisconsin to be precise, has just been arrested for fucking young boys. Yes, he apparently, I'm going. When he was questioned and asked why he was doing this, he apparently said he was trying to have sex with these boys to cure them of homosexuality. Well, it's just as valid a theory as homeopathy, and that gets funding from the government, doesn't it? Saying that, he might have a point, because, quite frankly, I'm not a homosexual, but if I was, and my first experience with this guy, I'd probably be put off by it too. Back in the UK, and a news story broke, ironically in the Daily Mail, a newspaper that has a fascination with this particular gentleman, and it turns out there is a house that looks like Hitler. Here is a picture. Hitler, for those of you who are not sure, is the one on the, well, I don't personally know. But we showed this to Glenn Beck and he had this to say. Back to America, and presidential candidate potential, yeah right, Newt Gingrich, you can't have a president called Newt, stated in an interview that he believes there will soon be an Islamic state run by atheists, or an atheist state run by Muslims. I can't be sure of this one. Newt Gingrich thinks that, an atheist country would be run by Islamists. So let me get this straight. This fucktard thinks that an atheist state would be run by Islamists. This fucktard, who's an atheist, thinks that Islamists are taking over this country and wants to try and stop them by aligning himself by signing a petition set up by this fucktard, who believes that atheists are evil, and he's probably got more in common with this fucktard, but also in terms of his beliefs as far as homosexuality, women's rights and science goes, he's more in common with this fucktard, whose beliefs are apparently taking over the country that this fucktard lives in, even though he's currently in the country of this fucktard, and this fucktard thinks that this fucktard, who's in line with this fucktard, is just like this fucktard. Make of that what you will. And in final news story of the week, yes, Louis Farrakhan is insane. I know, I'm going there as well. He recently stated that he believes the end times are near and that UFOs are going to come and destroy all white people. Yeah, this man's a reliable source for fucking information on Libya, isn't he? And now a special comment on this week's incidents involving Pastor Terry Jones burning the Quran and the subsequent slaughter of 13 people and the reaction that took place in Afghanistan. Last week, on the Dixon Clock News, I reported that Pastor Terry Jones had burned a Quran. My reaction was to say that nobody, and I quote, gave a shit. There was a subsequent protest outside the US Embassy, and upon storming the building, 13 people have since been killed. I would like to apologise for stating that nobody gave a shit when clearly people did. It is my fault, I hold myself accountable, and I hope I burn in hell for eternity. But now the time comes for the blame game, and whilst Pastor Terry Jones is free to express himself in whichever way he does, and whichever way he did, he certainly is not responsible for the actions of individuals. However, he is responsible for his own actions, and that is what I'd like to talk about tonight. In the 1995 film Die Hard with a Vengeance, police officer John McClane, played by Bruce Willis, was forced by a German terrorist to walk down the streets of Harlem, a predominantly African-American area, wearing a billboard sandwich sign that said, "I hate niggers." Upon being spotted by a group of young black African-American gentlemen, he subsequently faced a threat to his life. That was until the actions of one American hero, namely the character of Zeus, played by Samuel L. Jackson. Samuel L. Jackson stepped in and tried to talk this man out of it. Now let's say he had not. Would Bruce Willis be responsible for the actions of the men who would have attacked him and possibly taken his life? No. However, we cannot deny the fact that the provocation was there and the actions would not have taken place had it not been for John McClane's irresponsible actions, be they forced upon him by a German terrorist who was Hans Gruber's brother or not. But thankfully, thanks to one brave American, that incident never took place, and in fact, as we all remember, Zeus was harmed in the process of doing so. And let us turn to the words of another American hero, namely Spider-Man. With great power comes great responsibility. You, Pastor Terry Jones, sir, have a great power. That is the power to freely express yourself in whichever way you see fit. And I'm afraid your excuse that you gave on the news of, well, this shows there are extremist elements in Islam. Well, duh, sir. We know that, sir. We already had that under control, sir, and what you did was tantamount to laying in a room with a crack-addicted gorilla and poking him with a stick to see what would happen. We know the consequences, and we must therefore take them into account whenever we act accordingly. And whilst I would not call for Pastor Jerry Jones' actions to be banned illegally in any way, we must look to real American heroes like Samuel L. Jackson and Spider-Man. And Pastor Jerry Jones, can I advise you that you, in the future, think more like Spider-Man. Show that you can deserve the power, because you have the responsibility. And we, as fellow human beings of the human race here on planet Human, anytime we see anyone poking a gorilla with a stick or walking down the street with that billboard saying, "I hate niggers," we, as responsible Americans, must be like Zeus and step in and stop the bloodbath. I'm Keith Doberman. That's it for the Dix O'Clock News. Good night, and go fuck yourself. Guess what time it is?
Ah, durka durka durka.
Yes, welcome to the Dix O'Clock News, and we've got a lot of stories this week, so let's crack on. Coming out from Canada, a Muslim group is making no apologies for a video it's put on its internet site of Ku Klux Klan leader David Duke. The 12-minute video by the Canadian Shia Muslim organisation features Mr. David Duke espousing conspiracy theories about Zionist running dogs, whatever that means. What the fuck is wrong with Canada? First Venom Fangics, then we had the Nazis a couple of weeks ago, now the Muslims. Quick little note to the fucking Muslims in Canada. Psst, David Duke doesn't like you either. Coming over to this country, and in Manchester this week, a 21-year-old mother was arrested after she refused to pay a £2 fare on a bus and spat in the face of the driver. She was caught when the driver used what's known as a spit kit in order to get DNA and to have her arrested. She also squirted oil in the man's face. This is a picture of the 21-year-old mother, face like a bulldog licking piss off of a nettle. The bus driver in question, Mohammed Tawaizen, said that he was terrified and angry, and the fact that she squirted oil in his face really shook him up. I don't know, these Muslims, they hate it when we steal their oil, they hate it when we fucking give it back to them. Make your mind up, guys. Interesting news coming out from Norway. In order to combat problems with immigration, whatever they are, a far-right organisation in Norway is suggesting that foreigners undergo what's known as enforced Norwegian tuition. They haven't revealed what that involves, but I've got secret video footage of some of the initiation processes. Here they are.
Ready? Yes!
Yeah!
That was a fucking game! That was a good one.
And if things couldn't get even worse for Norway, this week the Norwegian Defence League, yes, there's a Norwegian Defence League, had a protest to combat, guess what? Islamisation. And here's a picture of the protest. Yes, I'm not joking. It makes fucking... that is it. That is all that turned up. Only 7 people were estimated to have arrived. I don't know why it was an estimate. Maybe no one in Norway can count that fucking high. You know, they might claim that this is because no one cares, but I reckon it's because everyone else is a Muslim. Going over to America now, and a serial killer in Long Island, and who was suspected to have killed 9 people, has still not been caught by police. The police have now expanded their search to get this going underwater. They have even put their best man on the job.
Creatures in the deep you couldn't imagine in your worst nightmares.
Hilarious news coming out from Indonesia, and this week a guy called Mr. Adafinto, who is part of an Islamic party and a member of parliament, was recently forced to quit when he was caught doing something. Now, I'm not going to tell you what he was caught doing, but I will say this. He was head of an Islamic party which promoted anti-pornography legislation. I wonder what he was caught doing. While you sit there and try and think it through, here's a picture of a cute dog to some music. Yes, that's right, he was caught siphoning funds to his bank account. I'm kidding, he was wanking. News broke this week that a Catholic publisher that was producing a book on the Catholic Church has had to retract 48,000 copies of the book after it accidentally printed a sentence in the book which stated that it was okay to use artificial or man-made forms of contraception. All the books have been recalled, and thankfully they've been spared any embarrassment. The book will be reissued in a couple of weeks, and you can buy a copy of Pope Benedict, What in the Butt soon. Over in America, and newly released FBI files show that apparently deceased rappers Tupac and Eazy-E were the targets of extortion attempts by a radical group of Jewish extremist gangsters. I love the fact they were called Jewish gangsters. I imagined at first they were looking for a guy like this. Look out for Snoop Zoggy Zog, he'll be coming your way soon. West Bank! A pub in the middle of Soho in London was recently forced to close its doors early because it's the centre of a dispute over a gay kiss. 2 young gay men by the name of James Bull and Jonathan Williams were enjoying their first date on a Wednesday evening when they said, well, they were forcibly removed, not from each other, from the Soho pub by the management, who described their behaviour as obscene. As a result of this, hundreds of protesters gathered outside the pub in order to have a massive gay kiss in order to protest. Now, given we've had Draw Mohammed Day, Burn a Quran Day, I'm thinking Thunderfoot. Me and you, son, let's go. No? Don't you care about freedom? And in final news coming out from America, and this one's a bit of a positive story, whilst there are lots of negative stories about politics and people are becoming very disillusioned with the current political climate, I want you to show you this clip and show you that there are people, there are bipartisan groups, particularly in Oregon, where this video comes from, who have shown the way forward.
We're no strangers to love. You know the rules, and so do I.
A full commitment's what I'm thinking of.
You wouldn't get this from any other guy.
I just want to tell you how I'm feeling.
Make sure you understand.
I'm never going to give you up.
I'll never let you down.
We're not going to run around and desert you.
Never gonna make you cry. Never gonna say goodbye. Never gonna tell a lie and hurt you.
That's it for the Dix O'Clock News. I'm Richard the Dick Coughlan, 000. See you next week. Good night, and go fuck yourself.
Oh, durka.
Sit back, relax, and take some dicks. Yes, it's time for the Dix O'Clock News. This is the only news show on the internet where the person presenting it is quite willing to admit, yes, I am not wearing any pants. The award for most ironic story of the century goes to something that happened in Chicago a couple of weeks ago when a load of Nazis gathered together in a hotel to celebrate Hitler's birthday. The Chicago Tribune reported that a group of about 60 people gathered in Clem's Restaurant and Banquet Hotel Room in Lyons on a Saturday night to celebrate what they called the 122nd anniversary of Hitler's birth and April the 12th, 1861 start of the Civil War. The room was reportedly decorated with swastika banners and had 2 cakes that read Happy Birthday Adolf and The South Was Right, White Men Fight. The South Will Rise Again. If the South rises again, wouldn't it become the North? However, the party came to an abrupt end when someone entered wearing a rucksack and then set off a smoke bomb. The Nazis were literally gassed out of Hitler's birthday. The police officer said they had a vague description of the man responsible. I don't really know what that description was, but I'm going to make a solid guess. West Bank! The owner of Clem's restaurant claims he had no idea and was totally unaware that he was renting out the room to a Hitler's birthday party celebration. Let me get this straight. This is what showed up, and he had no idea. This man is retarded. Sticking with the Nazi thing, but back in this country, the EDL had a great St George's Day on the 23rd of April when they celebrated by having their Facebook group shut down. Yes, their Facebook group was deleted on St George's Day. I, for one, am going to miss the EDL Facebook group. It was a source of great hilarity for me when I read some of the posts. I'm going to read you one of my favourite ones in remembrance of the EDL. Why do I have less rights than an illegal immigrant? It's not fair. All of these bastards come over, all they do is scrounge and claim benefits, beat their wives. We should chop their hands off, castrate them, and stick their bollocks on a stick outside the houses of those victims as a sign that we will not tolerate this kind of sickening behaviour in our country. I, for one, am frightened of Sharia law, and anyone who stands up and says that it should be implemented in this country should be burned alive, have their family shipped out, set out into a cage, and then killed, ritualistically, as we celebrate and dance around. I personally will not tolerate any barbaric behaviour like that of the Islamic Sharia law. It would be sad if it wasn't so fucking serious. It was on the Dick Scott News that I reported that Donald Trump was coming out as a bit of a birther. He has gone on a very long campaign to go on about Obama's birth certificate, only to get smacked down a couple of weeks ago when they released the long-form birth certificate. This interestingly led to Donald Trump pulling out of the presidential race, and it also means he has had one of the quickest rises and falls in the history of any presidential campaign. Last month it was found that he had a Republican field lead of 26%, but in the space of just 4 weeks he dropped all the way down to 8th, putting him in tie for 5th, just with Ron Paul. Now, to show you how quickly this decline happened, I want you to imagine that Donald Trump is the Wicked Witch in this 1970s Wizard of Oz toy.
Look what you got! I'm filthy! Filthy! Oh, what a world! What a world! Oh, what a thought a good little girl like you could destroy my beautiful wickedness!
Obviously, while I was gone a couple of weeks ago, Osama bin Laden was killed. At least that's what the official story is. And since then, there's been several controversial stories, which I'm going to cover now for you. Apparently, the United States is not being allowed by Pakistan to speak to Osama bin Laden's wives. However, there are other stories coming out that his wives have fled the country and are now seeking refuge elsewhere. I received a videotape this week that claims to be Osama bin Laden's wives hiding out somewhere in Cuba, trying to grieve and get over the loss of their husband. Looks like they're coping with it quite well. And in news that is just got greater evidence to the battle going on between Islam and the West, ageing Cro-Magnon pop star slapper Madonna has split from her 24-year-old Muslim boyfriend, citing religious differences. Personally, I could give a fuck about this story, but I think it's more likely to do with the fact that Madonna's arms are starting to look like the penis of an 80-year-old man. How do I know what an 80-year-old man's penis looks like? You don't want to know. The best Osama bin Laden story, of course, came out this week when it was revealed that he was in fact found to have had pornography in his lair. Really? The government have not revealed exactly what this pornography entailed. However, I have managed to acquire some of the actual covers from the videotapes and magazines. They included such titles as Cock and Oar, Camel Toes 9, Don't Be Racist, Suicide Bummers, and, the most shockingly of all, foot fetish porn. I'd like to thank Silver Era 309 for making all those. There was some really shocking pornography that I'm not allowed to show you. It had women doing stuff they're really not supposed to do, like voting, driving, having an opinion. It's really, really hardcore shit. And let's be honest, that's probably why they're not releasing the photos at the moment. I mean, I thought it was bad enough when your mum catches you tugging one out, but to have Navy SEAL 6 come in. However, as their conspiracy theories go left, right and centre about all of what happened to bin Laden, was it true, was he dead, I have managed to acquire, we here, and by that I mean me, at the Dick Scott News, have acquired a tape that reveals the truth about what happened to bin Laden, where he's been, where he's gone, and how it all took place. And I'm going to leave you with this very shocking video.
أشهد أن محمد رسول الله Hey ladies and gentlemen, Brett Keane here. You may have heard recently that bin Laden has been captured and killed by the United States of America. Supposedly, SEAL Team 6, also known as DEVGRA, found bin Laden in a town that I can't pronounce in Pakistan. You guys also may have been wondering why I haven't been making as many videos as late, or I haven't been beating my wife as much as I usually do. The person uploading videos to my account is actually someone I hired to impersonate me while I went deep undercover within the ranks of Al-Qaeda. I single-handedly managed to track down bin Laden to his hideaway in that place I just mentioned in that other country that he was in. See, I was originally worried that if I revealed my involvement in tracking down the most dangerous Muslim in the world, that it could open up me and maybe my family to danger. And I didn't want anyone to hurt my family except for me. I convinced DEVGRA to take all the credit for killing bin Laden, but in reality, I'm the one who actually did it. And then I learned that there was a $25 million reward on his head, and I was like, hey, you could do a lot with $25 million. So maybe you shouldn't hide who you are, and you should take the credit for the kill like you so richly deserve. Because otherwise that $25 million isn't going to go to anyone. I mean, it's pretty obvious to anyone with any common sense that I was the one who tracked down bin Laden. How do you think he got all that pornography up there in Pakistan? I used it to lure the prey into my trap. I used the porn for my own personal collection. I mean, have you ever seen my wife? I should get an award just for having to deal with that. But, apparently the government doesn't have a $25 million reward for banking Don Keane, only for killing bin Laden, which I did. So I think the government should give me the $25 million it owes me, or the equivalent in tacos, And until then, you should all just give me what money you have, and when the government gives me the $25 million, I'll pay you all back. Okay, everyone, this has been Brett Keane, and remember, I killed bin Laden. Give me money. Bye.
That's it from the Dix O'Clock News. It's good to be back. I'm Richard the Dick Coughlan. Good night, and go fuck yourself. Yes, the rapture didn't come, but dicks do. Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Dix O'Clock News, where I bring you the best news available on some blogs somewhere. Moving on, starting off as always with the English Defence League, and this week there was a bit of trouble for some of them in the English Defence League when David Monks, a 34-year-old from Hayden Street in Bolton, pleaded guilty to using threatening behaviour and swinging a punch at a security staff at one of their rallies. He was sentenced to a 91-day curfew and has to be in at 6 AM every night. Yes, if you're going to behave like children, we're going to treat you like one. Next, we're going to implement special punishment for EDL members who misbehave, including wedgies, Chinese burns, and flushing their head down the lavatory. And there are two news stories now, ladies and gentlemen, that quite frankly are starting to push my patience with the Muslims. Yes, you heard that right. First story comes from earlier this week when 6 Muslim gentlemen who were arrested several months ago under a suspicion that they were plotting to assassinate the Pope were found to be completely innocent. And in fact, they were just telling a joke to each other in a canteen that was taken the wrong way. This is immensely ironic considering that murdering the Pope would have been one of the few things Muslims could have actually done in order to get themselves on the good side of the secular community. Speaking of the Pope, news just out from the Vatican, he's turning into Yoda. And the second story concerning Muslims comes from that epic bastion of journalism, the Daily Mail, where this week in Birmingham, a advertising board showing a picture of a model advertising a bikini was defaced and painted black. There's no reason to believe it is Muslims at the moment, however it is suspected to be so because the Daily Mail suggests they were trying to paint a burqa on them. I've given a lot of patience to Muslims. I've stood up for them in the past, but now you're not assassinating the Pope, and now you're stopping me gawping at women's tits. Fuck you, that's it, I'm joining the EDL. I'm going to go do something so naughty that the British court is going to have to sentence me to a pink belly slapping. Those of you who have followed me on my other channels will realise that I've received a lot of hate mail from a young man on here who goes by the name of Zalmir. However, I received a message from one of his friends this week, which I would like to present to you now.
Messing with my mate ain't on okay. Alright mate, listen, you don't know me, I don't know you, but my mate Adam, he's called Zalmir username on YouTube, said you've been slinging shit at him being a cunt, that sort of shit. Well mate, it ain't on. Don't know if your mum is a packy or some crap, but you're seriously wrecking him, and I don't see my mate like that, okay? So you get it, you fat ponce. You don't like EDL, then fuck off to Wales, you slag. Quit messing with my mates or I'll fucking deck you.
That was of course read by D-Land and Cole, as we all know, Islamo sympathiser, Zionist chill and Holocaust denier. There is news coming out from Thailand that is quite worrying because they realise that the population of tigers is on the rise. The British responded to this by sending out one of our crack forces to find out what was actually going on.
Don't shoot, we're not a tiger. We were just,
One of the first stories on the Dick Scott News emanating from Russia. There was outrage this week when it was discovered that uniformed municipal police officer Miriam Misun, 31, from Russia, was discovered to be a high-profile member of a neo-Nazi organisation. He has publicly made statements that Roma people are, and I quote, asocial gypsy parasites. Well, I know Skaus Kasper says, so yeah, probably right. And he would like to institute labour camps and sterilisation. There has, of course, been outrage about this from the neo-Nazis, who are disgraced that they've got a fucking copper in their ranks. You can't get any lower than that. Fox News apparently are hypocrites. This coming from earlier this week when they released a story saying they were uneasy about the fact that George Soros, who wears curly shoes and eats hummus, is apparently influencing the media, because they don't like the idea of an outside foreign influence getting involved in American media. That's Fox News, owned by this Australian scrotum-faced git.
It's very hard to be neutral.
I'm sure most of you are probably familiar with the Zorba the Greek song. Well, it turns out the man who wrote it is a raging anti-Semite. I just think that's funny. Over in Bulgaria, there was a white supremacist rally being held. There were fights that broke out when they decided to siege upon a mosque, and fights broke out in between the group and Muslim protesters who were there to counter. Now, people think Bulgaria isn't interesting, and you'd be fucking right. The only interesting thing I could find out is Bulgaria is one of the few countries that during World War II actually managed to preserve all their Jews. Now, I think we need to bring people together a bit now, because I'm sick of hearing all this. Every week it's going to be the same. That Muslims are fucking covering bikinis up, and fucking they're going to be out fighting with these people, and mosques are going to be attacked, and then there's anti-Semites coming out and fucking complaining about that, and Nazis coming out, and fucking people who write stupid little songs that are fucking... Well, fuck this. Fuck all of you. We're going to sort this out right now. We're going to have a Muslim-Jew dance-off, and there's only one song I think we can play alongside it. And in final news, an interesting story coming out of Russia where this week a man was arrested for being, get this, an extremist Jehovah's Witness. I don't even know what that means. Oh, maybe that'll be find out.
Hello?
You're only supposed to blow the bloody doors off.